Peterson. I'm going to be kind of giving this presentation on my research for big data, and I guess here we go. So basically, I'm going to go over a couple things here: the purpose of my research, the thesis statement, a summary of the research that I did, namely, what is big data, problems associated with big data, how big data is analyzed, and my conclusion on the topic. That is also the very basic outline of what my outline looked like. So we'll kind of go through a few of those things here. So this is my thesis statement. The newcomer to business intelligence, big data, requires a new form of analytics to be fully effective. Basically, kind of a broad take on big data. I had this idea that it was going to need a new kind of analytics, being that it is this new form of kind of business intelligence. So I wanted to prove that, and to do that, we started off with asking the question, what is big data? And I'll go into that now. So what is big data exactly? I'll kind of go into what the term is. There's these three things that I noticed called the 3 V's of big data, which are volume, velocity, and variety. And going to touch on what type of data is big data, meaning, what constitutes big data, what type of information would you see in something that's considered big data. So the term big data itself is pretty apt to what it is. It's big data. It's just large amounts of data. It's sort of one of those terms like synergy. It's a marketable business term, meaning that it's sort of a buzzword. People get excited about the word big data, or the term big data, meaning there's just tons of information and tons of data, and it's this new form of exciting business intelligence. It's synonymous with big data analytics. That's what I've found in a lot of my research, is that when people are talking about big data, they're not only talking about the size or the speed of the data, it's how you manage and analyze it, and that's actually something that I'll touch on later. So, of the 3 V's of big data, volume, pretty obvious here. I mean, volume speaks to the sheer amount of data. The second of the 3 is velocity, meaning the speed at which data can be collected. For example, there are millions of transactions, as they're called, every single day, about millions and billions of different people, and all that data is stored, and they can range from kind of GPS location on your phone, which plays into this next V, variety. So anything can be big data, whether it's how you're clicking on your internet browser, how you're talking on your phone, where you're talking on your phone, types of things you're searching for, shopping, buying, all kinds of things. It really is a main aspect of big data, meaning that it's not just, this person bought something here. It's all of these other people are buying this, and how that trend analysis works. So this kind of leads to what type of data is big data. So obviously you've heard of some data collection in social media or social networking habits. The location of your cell phone usage helps cell phone carriers and everybody else determine where in the world their product is being used. Your shopping habits, I'm sure you've seen your Amazon suggesting things for you. Your search habits and online interests. So again, sort of what you're looking at, and companies that are associated with those things are very interested in. And of course, there are a lot more that that no one really even knows are being collected as big data. So how exactly is big data used? Well, I'll go into that. Big data is basically used as a form of analysis, or it's used in analytics in its own form called big data analytics. And that basically takes things from normal business analytics, where you're looking for trends, and expands it into sort of discovering new connections between the data. Essentially, the larger amounts of data, you can find new correlations between trends in the data that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to see with less data. So this kind of comes into some problems that are associated with big data. Physical problems, meaning how you store the data, the amount of data that you can bring in physically. I mean, if your processors or servers are slow or small, you're limiting the amount of big data you're able to process and store. And that kind of comes down to processing problems where your resources, say like analysts or other employees, the way that you can process this data tends to be a problem, especially in smaller companies. And that comes down to the big business versus small business. Larger businesses are able to keep up with this changing trend. Big data is a very new and volatile thing, so it's constantly expanding, and the amount of data we're seeing is growing incredibly fast. If you think about how back in the day when you were younger, terabytes were an unheard of amount of space, but we're getting into they were mentioning forms of storage that I couldn't even, billions and billions of gigabytes of data. Well, okay, we'll not go that far, but you get the idea. Large amounts of that, and it's expanding very quickly. So big businesses with their resources are more able to keep up with the changing trend than small businesses are, and that ultimately tends to hurt smaller businesses if they can't keep up and make meaningful analysis of the trends. And as far as I was expecting to find that incorrect data was a problem, but really the way that big data is actually collected is all based on real-time events that people are using. So your like habits on Facebook are most likely not going to be incorrectly represented by you. So the data itself is also very correct, or there's one more V that I can't quite remember that basically meant that it was valid, or the validity of the data. So I was surprised to see in my research that incorrect data was, and that also plays into the term big data analytics. So it's this newer form of analytics that basically plays off of traditional analytics, where instead of looking for trends, though, they're thought of as a discovery type of analytics, meaning, like I said before, finding new connections and correlations between data points. And that's, again, beyond trend analysis. So it stems from trend analysis in that you're looking at how people have in the past used these things, and just move so much farther onto that to how you can advance your business in the future. So, and that's also why it's called advanced analytics, in that you're potentially advancing your business. When you're thinking of big data analytics as well, there are many tools of analytics that are applying more specifically to big data analytics, such as data warehouses and statistical analysis that helps you both detect trends and kind of extrapolate those trends into the future and see how they match up as far as your predictions on how your trends and all that stuff are going to work. So this kind of leads to the conclusion. Basically found that my thesis was proven, that big data requires a new form of analytics to be successful. This thesis is proven by big data requiring an advanced form of analytics that seeks not only to analyze trends, but recognize trends that may have otherwise been overlooked. Meaning that this new form of analytics takes into account a lot more data sets than traditional analytics, and instead of looking at things in the past, it looks to find new meaningful relations between the data that would help you improve your business otherwise, or that you wouldn't have seen otherwise if you were just looking at a few sets of data. And kind of a summary of my annotated bibliography, I had three main focuses: finding the definitions of big data, things that touched on the practical applications of big data, and then a summary of some of the problems. And I found like a lot of these were really well versed, and they covered all three of them. But these were just a lot of the main focuses that I was looking for. Thankfully, a lot of the ones that had problems or that identified problems also identified solutions, so I wasn't required to throw them out because they were biased or by my standards. So a lot of business writing, especially IBM, has a very vested interest in big data. I've seen a lot of sources that are at least endorsed by IBM. Harvard Business Review has a lot of books and articles on this sort of thing as well, so that was pretty nice. Well, I hope you enjoyed this presentation. That's kind of a summary of my big data paper.